Google Earth has been quietly censoring over 4,000 locations across the planet. Most of them, nobody talks about. Most of them, nobody notices. But at one of them, buried under triple canopy jungle in a remote corner of Guatemala, they're hiding something that shouldn't exist. Something that, according to every archaeological record, every historical survey, every geological map of the region, simply isn't there. Except it is. And in 2024, a university team proved it. I need you to sit with that for a moment. A structure, massive, geometric, clearly artificial, confirmed by modern LiDAR scanning technology, sitting at coordinates that Google Earth has gone out of its way to obscure. Not blur. Not pixelate. Obscure, as in, replace the actual satellite imagery with something else entirely. Something that looks like untouched jungle. The question isn't whether the structure is real. That's been answered. The question is why one of the most powerful technology companies on Earth doesn't want you to see it. And that question leads somewhere very dark. Let's start where every good investigation starts, not with answers, but with the moment someone first realized something was wrong. In 2009, a software developer named Martin Barczyk began doing something that most people would consider tedious. He was comparing satellite imagery across different mapping platforms, Google Earth, Bing Maps, Yandex, and several commercial satellite providers, looking for discrepancies. Not small ones. Not color correction differences or seasonal variation in vegetation. He was looking for locations where the imagery fundamentally disagreed. Where one platform showed a building, and another showed an empty field. Where one showed ocean, and another showed land. Where Google Earth showed pristine wilderness, and every other available source showed something else entirely. What he found became the foundation for a project that would eventually be called the Map of the Dead. It's a name that sounds theatrical, almost melodramatic, until you understand what it actually refers to. Barczyk chose the name not because he believed people had died at these locations, though at some of them, they certainly had, but because these were places that had been killed on the map. Erased. Overwritten. Made to disappear in the digital cartography that 7 billion people rely on to understand their world. The first version of the database contained roughly 800 locations. By 2015, after Barczyk opened the project to crowdsourced contributions and established verification protocols, requiring discrepancies to be confirmed across at least 3 independent satellite providers before a location could be added, the database had grown to over 2,000 entries. Today, it contains more than 4,000 confirmed censored locations. 4,000 places on Earth that someone, and we'll get to who, decided you shouldn't be able to see from above. Now, let me be clear about something before we go further. A significant majority of these locations have explanations that, while not publicly acknowledged, are at least comprehensible. Military installations. Nuclear facilities. Government buildings in nations with strict aerial photography laws. The headquarters of intelligence agencies. Palaces of heads of state. Approximately 3,700 of the 4,000 plus entries in the Map of the Dead fall into categories that are sensitive but ultimately unsurprising. You might argue about whether a democracy should allow a private corporation to censor publicly accessible satellite imagery at the request of a government, but the fact that it happens is well documented and, at this point, widely understood. But that leaves roughly 300 locations. 300 places scattered across 6 continents where the imagery has been deliberately altered, and there is no known military installation, no government facility, no nuclear site, no intelligence headquarters, nothing in any public record that would explain why these coordinates have been erased. 300 dead zones on the map with no apparent reason to be dead. And that's where this story stops being about technology and starts being about something else entirely. The Map of the Dead community, which by 2020 had grown to include cartographers, OSINT researchers, amateur archaeologists, satellite imagery analysts, and more than a few people with backgrounds in intelligence, began systematically investigating these 300 anomalous locations. They developed a classification system. Category A locations were those where the censorship appeared to be hiding man-made structures. Category B locations were those where the censorship appeared to be hiding natural features, unusual geological formations, bodies of water, terrain anomalies. Category C locations were those where the censorship was so thorough that nothing could be determined about what lay beneath. 5 patterns emerged that nobody could explain. First, 37 of the anomalous locations were in extremely remote areas, deep jungle, high desert, Arctic tundra, places where there would be no strategic reason to censor imagery because there was ostensibly nothing there to protect. Second, at least 12 locations showed evidence of what researchers called temporal manipulation. The censored imagery wasn't simply blurred or replaced with a generic texture. Instead, it appeared to use real satellite imagery from the same region, but from a different time period, carefully stitched in to make the alteration invisible to casual observation. Someone had gone to extraordinary effort to make these places look normal. Third, 7 locations that were censored on Google Earth were also censored on Bing Maps, Yandex, and Apple Maps, all 4 major platforms simultaneously. This is significant because these companies are competitors. They use different satellite imagery providers. For all 4 to censor the same location requires either an extraordinary coincidence or coordination at a level that implies a single authority directing all of them. Fourth, several censored locations corresponded to areas where indigenous communities had reported unusual government or military activity, but where no official records of such activity existed. And fifth, the detail that would eventually make international headlines, at least 3 censored locations, when examined using historical imagery archives that predated the censorship, showed structures or features that did not correspond to anything in the archaeological or geological record. Things that, officially, were not supposed to be there. The Guatemala site was the most dramatic of these. And it's the one that changed everything. The coordinates placed the location in the Petén Department, the vast northern lowland region of Guatemala that contains the largest remaining tropical rainforest in Central America outside the Amazon. This is the heartland of the ancient Maya civilization. Tikal is here. El Mirador is here. Dozens of known archaeological sites that the landscape, many of them still unexcavated, most of them protected, at least in theory, by Guatemalan heritage laws. The map of the dead community first flagged this location in 2017 when a contributor noticed that a roughly rectangular patch of jungle, approximately 400 meters by 250 meters, appeared subtly different from its surroundings on Google Earth. The color was slightly off. The texture of the canopy was uniform in a way that real jungle canopy never is. Real tropical rainforest, viewed from above, is chaotic, a fractal mess of different species, different heights, gaps where trees have fallen, variations in color from flowering cycles and disease. This patch looked like a photograph of jungle that had been laid over something like wallpaper. The contributor, who went by the handle Meridian_Watch, compared the current imagery to historical satellite data available through Google Earth's timeline feature. And this is where the first truly unsettling detail emerged. Prior to 2009, the same coordinates showed the jungle canopy as expected, but with a critical difference. In imagery from 2006, captured by the GOI satellite, you could see shadows. Long, angular shadows that fell across the canopy in a pattern that was geometrically impossible for natural terrain. Shadows that suggested something beneath the trees was casting them, something with straight edges, right angles, and an estimated height of 15 to 20 meters above the surrounding forest floor. From 2009 onward, the shadows were gone. The imagery had been replaced. Meridian_Watch posted the findings to the Map of the Dead forum, and within weeks, the community had pulled every available piece of historical satellite data for the location. They found imagery from 3 different providers spanning 2004 to 2008, and in all of them, the shadows were present. The geometric pattern was consistent across different times of day and different seasons, which meant the object casting the shadows was permanent and solid. This wasn't a trick of light. This wasn't pareidolia. Something was there. 3 questions dominated the community's discussion. What was the structure? Why wasn't it in any archaeological database? And why had someone gone to the trouble of digitally erasing it from every major mapping platform starting in approximately 2009? Let me pause here and acknowledge the obvious counterargument. The Maya built thousands of structures across the Tibetan lowlands. Many of them are undocumented. Many of them are hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth. Discovering a new Maya ruin, while exciting to archaeologists, is not inherently mysterious. It happens regularly. In fact, LiDAR surveys conducted by the Procunum Foundation in 2018 revealed more than 60,000 previously unknown structures in the Guatemalan jungle. Ancient ruins in this part of the world are abundant. But there are three things about this particular structure that don't fit that explanation. The first is the censorship itself. No other undocumented Maya ruin has been digitally erased from satellite imagery. Thousands of them are visible on Google Earth right now. There's no precedent for hiding an archaeological site this way, and no obvious motive. The second is the geometry. Maya architecture, while sophisticated, follows well-understood patterns: stepped pyramids, rectangular platform mounds, causeways, plazas. The shadow pattern at the Guatemala coordinates doesn't match any known Maya architectural style. The angles are wrong. Several analysts noted that the proportions more closely resembled structures found in Mesopotamia or even Southeast Asia than anything documented in Mesoamerica. This doesn't mean it's not Maya. It could represent a previously unknown architectural tradition, but it's anomalous. The third, and most disturbing, is what happened when people started asking questions. In 2019, a graduate student in archaeology at the University of Texas, I'm withholding their name at their request, filed a formal inquiry with Guatemala's Ministry of Culture and Sports, asking whether any archaeological surveys had been conducted at the coordinates in question. The response, received after 4 months, stated that no surveys had been conducted and that the ministry had no records of any archaeological site at that location. Fine. Bureaucratic answer. Expected. But 6 weeks after receiving the response, the graduate student discovered that their university email account had been accessed from an IP address they didn't recognize. The access came from a block assigned to a commercial VPN provider, making it untraceable. Nothing was deleted. Nothing was altered. Someone had simply logged in, looked around, and logged out. Coincidence? Maybe. Graduate students get phished all the time. But the timing was notable, and the student reported it to both their university's IT security team and the map of the dead community. They were not the last person to experience something like this. In 2021, a small team of independent researchers, 3 ASCEND analysts and a retired geospatial intelligence officer, attempted to organize a ground expedition to the coordinates. They reached out to local guides in the Petén region, secured preliminary permits through the University of San Carlos in Guatemala City, and began planning logistics for a dry season trek to the site. The expedition never happened. And the reasons it didn't happen are where this story takes its darkest turn. The first obstacle was logistical. The local guides who initially agreed to lead the team to the coordinates pulled out. All 3 of them. Independently. Within the same week. Each gave a different reason: family emergency, scheduling conflict, equipment problems, but the timing was suspicious. When one of the researchers followed up with the most experienced guide, a man who had been leading jungle expeditions in Petén for over 20 years, the guide said something that the researcher later described as the most unsettling moment of the entire project. He said, in Spanish, roughly translated, that area is known. People who go there are known too. I don't want to be known. The second obstacle was bureaucratic. The permits that had been provisionally approved through the University of San Carlos were suddenly flagged for additional review. The review process stalled indefinitely. No one at the university could explain why. The faculty member who had facilitated the application quietly advised the team to choose a different site. The third obstacle was digital. 2 of the 3 ASCEND analysts involved in planning the expedition had their personal cloud storage accounts accessed by unknown parties. Again, nothing was deleted. Nothing was altered. But in one case, the analyst discovered that a folder containing all of their research on the Guatemala coordinates had been downloaded. All of it. Every file. The expedition was abandoned. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not claiming that any government or corporation orchestrated a campaign to prevent this expedition. The individual events, guides backing out, permits stalling, accounts being accessed, could each have innocent explanations. But taken together, they form a pattern that is, at minimum, deeply uncomfortable. And they echo something that investigative journalists and independent researchers have reported in other contexts, not overt suppression, but a kind of ambient resistance. Doors that close. Phones that don't get answered. A pervasive sense that you've crossed a line you can't see but that someone is watching you approach. The map of the dead community calls this the fog. It's the phenomenon where investigation into certain censored locations seems to generate a disproportionate amount of difficulty, obstruction, and coincidental surveillance. Not all locations trigger it. Most don't. But a handful, perhaps a dozen of the 300 anomalous sites, seem to be surrounded by it. And the Guatemala location is at the top of that list. Let's talk about what happened next, because this is where the story shifts from disturbing to genuinely unprecedented. In early 2023, Dr. William Carter, a professor of civil engineering at the University of Houston and a pioneer in the use of LiDAR technology for terrain mapping, became aware of the map of the dead research. Dr. Carter's work had previously focused on coastal erosion modeling and floodplain mapping, but he had connections in the remote sensing community and access to LiDAR datasets that most independent researchers could only dream of. What drew Carter to the Guatemala site wasn't the mystery. By his own account, he was initially skeptical. What drew him was the technical challenge. The satellite imagery manipulation was, from a geospatial engineering perspective, remarkably sophisticated. Carter wanted to understand how it had been done. He approached it as a technical problem, not a conspiracy. Carter's team obtained high-resolution LiDAR data for the Petén Lowlands from two sources, the Pecunum Foundation's 2018 aerial survey and a more recent 2022 dataset collected by a European Space Agency initiative mapping tropical deforestation. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, works by firing millions of laser pulses at the ground from an aircraft and measuring how long each pulse takes to bounce back. Crucially, LiDAR penetrates forest canopy. It can see through the trees. It shows you the ground itself, stripped bare, revealing every contour, every elevation change, every structure hidden beneath centuries of growth. And what it revealed at the Guatemala coordinates was unambiguous. There is a structure there. It is artificial. It is large. Carter's analysis estimated the main feature at approximately 300 meters in length, 180 meters in width, with distinct elevation changes suggesting walls or terraces rising 12 to 18 meters above the surrounding terrain. The geometry is consistent with a constructed platform or foundation of enormous scale. But here's what made Carter's findings genuinely troubling. The structure doesn't match any known Maya architectural pattern. The proportions are wrong. The orientation is wrong. Maya structures are almost universally aligned to cardinal directions or to specific astronomical events. This structure is oriented at approximately 17 degrees off true north, which doesn't correspond to any known alignment convention in Mesoamerican archaeology. The material density readings from the LiDAR data suggest the structure is made of something denser than the limestone that the Maya universally used in this region. LiDAR can't identify materials directly, but the reflectivity characteristics of the surfaces detected at this site are inconsistent with limestone. They're inconsistent with any natural stone found in the Petén Lowlands. And the structure's footprint, its plan, its layout, its proportional relationships, bears no resemblance to any documented archaeological site in the Western Hemisphere. Carter published a preliminary paper in the Journal of Archaeological Science, reports in late 2024. The paper was carefully worded. It confirmed the existence of an artificial structure at the coordinates. It noted the structure's anomalous characteristics. It did not speculate about origin, age, or purpose. and it explicitly called for a ground-based archaeological investigation. The paper generated significant attention in the archaeological and remote sensing communities. It also generated something else, something that Carter himself described as unexpected and unwelcome. Within 2 weeks of publication, Carter received a formal request, not a subpoena, not a legal order, but a request, from an entity he declined to publicly name, asking him to share his raw LiDAR data. The request came through his university's Office of Research, which is unusual because academic data sharing requests typically go directly to the researcher. Carter complied, sharing the data as required by his funding agreement's open access provisions. But he noted publicly that the requesting entity was not an academic institution and was not, to his knowledge, a government agency. When asked directly who had requested the data, Carter told a reporter from Ars Technica, "I was asked not to discuss the specifics. I'll say that the level of interest was disproportionate to what I would expect for a preliminary archaeological survey paper." Let me step back for a moment and talk about what we actually know, and what we don't, about how satellite imagery censorship works. Google Earth's imagery comes from multiple providers, primarily Maxar Technologies, which operates several commercial imaging satellites, and Airbus Defence and Space, which operates the Pleiades constellation. Google doesn't capture its own satellite imagery. It licenses it. The imagery is then processed, stitched together, color-corrected, and served to users through the Google Earth platform. Censorship can occur at multiple points in this pipeline. The satellite operator can withhold imagery. The government of the country being imaged can request censorship under national security laws. Google itself can decide to obscure locations, and has publicly stated that it complies with censorship requests from various governments when required by law. But there's a fourth option that's less discussed: the imagery can be altered before it ever reaches Google. If the original satellite operator, Maxar, Airbus, or another provider, modifies the imagery at the source, then every platform that licenses from that provider will show the same altered imagery. This would explain how the Guatemala site came to be censored simultaneously across Google Earth, Bing Maps, Yandex, and Apple Maps. It wouldn't require coordination between the companies. It would only require intervention at the source. And that raises a question that, frankly, I don't have an answer to. Who has the authority to direct a commercial satellite imagery provider to alter its products? Governments do, in certain circumstances, under national security frameworks. But the Guatemala site isn't a military installation. It isn't a nuclear facility. It isn't a government building. By every official account, it doesn't exist at all. So who made the call? And why? Let me tell you about 3 other locations from the Map of the Dead's anomalous list, because they provide crucial context. 3 sites that, like the Guatemala location, show evidence of deliberate censorship with no apparent governmental or military justification. 3 sites where what lies beneath the digital erasure seems to be something that isn't supposed to be there. The first is in Kazakhstan. Coordinates in the Bipakdala Desert, roughly 200 kilometers from the nearest settlement. Google Earth shows flat, featureless steppe. Historical imagery from 2003 shows a series of circular depressions, each approximately 60 meters in diameter, arranged in a precise hexagonal pattern spanning nearly a kilometer. The pattern is too regular to be natural. No archaeological survey of the area has ever been published. The region has no known historical significance. The second is in the South Pacific, on a small, uninhabited island in the Tuamotu archipelago of French Polynesia. The island itself is visible on Google Earth, but approximately 40% of its interior is replaced with what imagery analysts have identified as cloned ocean texture, the visual equivalent of painting over something with a picture of water. Historical imagery shows dense vegetation covering the entire island. Why would someone digitally flood half of a tiny, uninhabited island? The third is in northern Canada, in the boreal forest of northern Ontario. A clearing, approximately 1 kilometer square, that appears on historical imagery from 2001 to 2007 but has been replaced with continuous forest cover on all current platforms. The clearing contained what appeared to be a structure, rectilinear, dark surface, with no visible access roads or infrastructure connecting it to anything. It appeared, existed for 6 years in the satellite record, and then was digitally erased as though it had never been there. What connects these sites? The map of the dead community has identified several commonalities. All four, Guatemala, Kazakhstan, French Polynesia, and Northern Ontario, were censored in roughly the same time frame, between 2008 and 2011. All four show evidence of the same sophisticated image manipulation technique, temporal stitching, where real imagery from a different time period is composited over the target area. All four show structures or features that don't correspond to any known human activity. And all four are in locations so remote that the censorship itself is the only reason anyone noticed them. Think about that for a moment. If you wanted to hide something, truly hide it, you would put it somewhere nobody looks. And for most of human history, that strategy would have worked perfectly. But satellite imagery changed the game. Suddenly, every square meter of the planet's surface was visible to anyone with an internet connection. The wilderness wasn't private anymore. Every clearing, every structure, every shadow in every jungle was accessible from a desk chair in Des Moines. Unless someone made it not visible. And that's what appears to have happened at these locations. Someone, or some entity, recognized that satellite imagery had exposed things that were supposed to stay hidden, and they intervened. Not by physically removing the structures. Not by deploying camouflage or building covers. But by altering the digital record. By making the map lie. The question is, what's worth that level of effort? Let's go back to Guatemala. In 2024, following the publication of Carter's paper, a Guatemalan journalist named Elena Rios Montalvo began investigating the site from a different angle. Rather than focusing on the structure itself, she focused on the land. Who owned it? What was its legal status? Had any permits been issued for construction, mining, or development at or near the coordinates? What she found was a bureaucratic labyrinth. The land falls within the Maya Biosphere Reserve, a protected area encompassing over 21,000 square kilometers of jungle. Within the reserve, land use is strictly regulated. No construction, mining, or development is permitted in the core zone. The coordinates of the structure fall within the core zone. But Rios Montalvo discovered something unusual in the Guatemalan land registry. A concession, essentially, a permit allowing specific use of protected land, had been granted for a parcel that included the coordinates. The concession was issued in 2003, 6 years before the satellite imagery was censored. It was granted to an entity registered in Panama, with no public record of ownership or activity. The stated purpose of the concession was scientific research. A concession for scientific research in the core zone of the Maya Biosphere Reserve is not, in itself, unusual. Academic institutions and conservation organizations hold many such concessions. But Rios Montalvo could find no evidence that the Panamanian entity had ever published any research, filed any reports, or conducted any visible activity at the site. It existed on paper. It held rights to the land. And it had done, or at least publicly disclosed, nothing. When Rios Montalvo attempted to trace the ownership of the Panamanian entity through corporate filings, she hit a wall. Panama's corporate privacy laws are among the most opaque in the world. The entity was registered through a legal firm in Panama City that did not respond to her inquiries. The trail ended there. But the timing is worth noting. A mysterious entity acquires rights to a remote piece of protected jungle in 2003. Between 2004 and 2008, satellite imagery shows anomalous shadows suggesting a large artificial structure at the site. In approximately 2009, the satellite imagery is altered to hide the structure. And the entity that holds the concession remains anonymous and silent. I want to talk about what the structure might be, because the honest answer, the answer that any responsible researcher would give, is that we don't know. We have LiDAR data confirming an artificial structure. We have historical satellite imagery showing geometric shadows. We have anomalous material density readings. And we have no ground-based investigation, no core samples, no radiocarbon dates, no photographs, no first-hand observations. What we have are possibilities. And the range of possibilities is wider than you might think. The most conservative explanation is that the structure is an undocumented Maya site with unusual characteristics. Maya archaeology is constantly evolving. New sites are discovered regularly, and some challenge previous assumptions about Maya architectural norms. The anomalous orientation and proportions could represent a regional variant or a temporal outlier, a structure built during a period or by a group whose architectural traditions differ from the well-documented classic Maya norm. A slightly less conservative explanation is that the structure predates Maya civilization. The Maya lowlands were inhabited long before the Maya. Earlier cultures, including the poorly understood Archaic period inhabitants of the region, may have built structures that we haven't yet documented. If the Guatemala site predates the Maya by centuries or millennia, it could represent a previously unknown architectural tradition, which would be an extraordinary archaeological discovery but not an inexplicable one. A more speculative explanation, and one that several members of the Map of the Dead community have proposed, is that the structure is modern. That it was built in recent decades by the anonymous Panamanian entity that holds the concession. That it was built for a purpose we don't understand, in a location chosen for its remoteness, and then hidden from satellite view when the builders realized that commercial satellite imagery made their location visible. This explanation raises its own questions. What would someone build in the middle of protected jungle, at enormous expense and logistical difficulty, that they would then need to hide from the world? A drug processing facility? A weapons cache? An illegal mining operation? All of these have been found in the Petén lowlands before. But none of them would produce a structure of the size and geometric precision that the LiDAR data shows. Drug labs are crude. Mining operations leave distinctive scars on the landscape. What's at these coordinates is something else. And then there's the explanation that nobody in the serious research community wants to say out loud, but that hangs over this entire investigation like a shadow. The explanation that the structure is something we don't have a category for. Something that doesn't fit our existing frameworks for understanding what humans have built, when they built it, and why. I'm not going to speculate about what that might mean. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself and let you draw your own conclusions. But I will say this, the censorship itself is the strongest evidence that something extraordinary is happening. You don't deploy sophisticated image manipulation techniques across multiple commercial satellite providers, maintain them for over 15 years, and coordinate their application across at least 4 major mapping platforms to hide a run-of-the-mill archaeological site. Whatever is at those coordinates, someone with significant resources and authority has decided that the public cannot be allowed to see it. And they've been largely successful. Until now. Since Carter's paper was published, the academic response has been mixed. Several archaeologists have called for an immediate ground investigation, noting that the LiDAR data alone justifies a major research expedition. Others have been more cautious, pointing out that LiDAR interpretation can be misleading and that ground truthing is essential before any conclusions can be drawn. A few have been dismissive, arguing that the Map of the Dead community is prone to pareidolia and conspiratorial thinking. But none of them have explained the censorship. That's the detail that resists every mundane explanation. You can argue about what the structure is. You can argue about how old it is. You can argue about who built it. But you cannot argue that the satellite imagery was altered, because the evidence for that is definitive and has been confirmed by independent analysts. Something is there. And someone doesn't want you to see it. As of the time I'm writing this, no ground expedition to the site has been approved by Guatemalan authorities. 2 separate applications, one from a European university consortium, one from a private archaeological firm based in Mexico City, have been submitted. Both are listed as under review. Neither has received a timeline for decision. The Map of the Dead community continues to monitor the site. They've noted that the censored imagery has been updated at least twice since 2009, each time with more sophisticated compositing that makes the alteration harder to detect. Someone is actively maintaining the deception. Someone is going back, checking their work, and making it better. I keep coming back to what the guide told the researchers in 2021. That area is known. People who go there are known too. I don't want to be known. Known by whom? There's a concept in information security called the Streisand effect, the phenomenon where attempting to suppress information inadvertently draws more attention to it. The censorship of the Guatemala site is, in some ways, a textbook example. If the imagery had never been altered, the structure, whatever it is, would likely have gone unnoticed, one more anomaly among thousands in the dense archaeological landscape of the Petén Lowlands. But by censoring it, whoever is responsible marked it as important. They drew a circle around it and wrote, in effect, "Look here." But maybe that analysis gives them too little credit. Maybe they understood the Streisand effect perfectly well and calculated that it was still worth the risk. That the alternative, letting the structure be visible, was worse. Worse how? What could be so significant about a structure in the jungle that even the risk of drawing attention through censorship was preferable to letting it be seen? I don't know. And right now, neither does anyone else who's willing to go on the record. But I want to leave you with one final detail. One more thread that I haven't been able to reconcile with any explanation I've considered. In late 2024, a user on the Map of the Dead forum, an account created specifically for this single post, never used before or since, uploaded a photograph. It was a ground-level image. Shot on what appeared to be a mobile phone. Slightly blurred. Taken through dense vegetation. It showed a wall. Not a ruin. Not a crumbling, vine-covered remnant of ancient architecture. A wall. Clean-edged. Vertical. Made of a dark material that appeared smooth and uniform. Rising out of the jungle floor and disappearing into the canopy above, with no visible weathering, no biological growth, no erosion. The metadata had been stripped from the image. No GPS coordinates, no camera model, no timestamp. The account that posted it used a VPN. The accompanying text was 3 words, "It's not old." The post was removed by forum moderators within 6 hours, citing the inability to verify its authenticity. Screenshots were saved by multiple users. The image has since been analyzed by several digital forensics specialists within the community. Their consensus: the image shows no signs of digital manipulation. The lighting, the color profile, the depth of field, the compression artifacts, all are consistent with a genuine photograph taken in a tropical forest environment. It could be a hoax. It could be a photograph of a completely unrelated structure in a completely unrelated jungle. There's no way to confirm that it depicts the Guatemala site. But it's not old. 3 words that, if true, change everything. Because if the structure isn't ancient, if it's not an archaeological relic but something built in living memory, then every question we've been asking needs to be reframed. Not, what did our ancestors build, but what is someone building right now, in the most remote places on Earth, that they don't want the rest of us to know about? The Map of the Dead documents over 4,000 censored locations. 300 of them have no explanation. And at least one of them contains something that a major university has confirmed is real, that multiple satellite providers have conspired to hide, and that someone may have photographed from the ground, a smooth, dark, modern wall rising silently from the floor of the Guatemalan jungle. Google Earth will show you almost anything. Your neighbor's backyard. The roof of the Pentagon. The summit of Everest. The bottom of the Mariana Trench. But it won't show you this. I've been staring at maps for a long time now. And I've come to understand something about the relationship between seeing and knowing. A map is not the territory. It's a representation. A translation. And like all translations, it involves choices, what to include, what to emphasize, what to leave out. Every map is an argument about what matters. And the argument being made by the people who censored these locations is clear: this doesn't matter. Don't look here. Nothing to see. But there is something to see. We know that now. The LiDAR proved it. The historical satellite imagery proves it. And maybe, just maybe, a blurry photograph taken by someone who went where they were told not to go proves it too. The fog is thick around this one. Thicker than most. The guides won't take you there. The permits won't come through. The imagery has been scrubbed. The data gets requested by unnamed entities. And a single, anonymous photograph appears for 6 hours and then vanishes. But the structure remains. Under the canopy. In the dark. In the place that the map says is empty. Whatever it is, it's there. It's real. And someone very powerful wants it to stay hidden. The question I keep asking myself, the question that keeps me awake, the question I'll leave with you, isn't what the structure is. We might never know that, not unless someone manages to get boots on the ground and eyes on that wall. The question is simpler, and somehow more unsettling. How many other things have they hidden that we haven't found yet? 4,000 censored locations. 300 without explanation. And those are just the ones we've caught. What does the map show in the places where nobody thought to check? In the places where the forgery is better? In the places where nobody compared the shadows, nobody noticed the color shift, nobody wondered why the canopy looked just a little too uniform? The map of the dead documents what we found. But it can only document what we've looked for. And the Earth is very, very large. What do you think is really behind the censored locations? What do you think is standing in that jungle? And what do you think happens to the people who try to find out? Leave your theory below. Because I think this is a story that's just beginning.